Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. I'm very pleased to be kicking off Spark Animation and WIA Vancouver's Diversity and Inclusion Summit. Welcome to Storytelling from Home, directing a short film from the coffee table, Cinzia Angelini and the short film Mila. First, a few housekeeping items. Please enter your questions as they come up in the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. We'll be compiling questions throughout the chat, and at the end of our conversation, we're going to go straight to the questions and we'll answer as many of them as we can. The Spark Animation Festival runs until November 8th, so please check it out. For full festival and program details, go to sparkanimation.ca. Also, note that as Monday, November 2nd, you'll be able to stream this session and all others from the day on demand. So we're in for a very inspiring and innovative chat. First, a bit about WIA. Founded in 1995, Women in Animation is the only organization dedicated to advancing women in the field of animation. We envision a world where women share equally in the creation, production, and rewards of animation. And we provide resources and connections to make it happen. We partnered with Spark for today's summit because now more than ever, we need to strengthen the ties that bind us and support each other. It's a different way of connection. And as an organization, WIA is committed to evolving the way that we provide programs, mentorship, and opportunities for growth and learning. Although this is a virtual panel, I would like to acknowledge that a number of us are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Cinzia, thank you for being here. It's a true pleasure to talk to you, talk about your process, and share details of your short film, Mila, with this group.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start off talking a little bit about you. So you were born in Milan and at 23 moved to London. From there, you spent some time in Munich, and now you reside in LA. You've worked with Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, Sony Imageworks, Walt Disney Animation, and Illumination, among others, both in the story and animation departments. Your work includes Balto, Prince of Egypt, El Dorado, Spirit 2, Sinbad, Spider-Man 2, Open Season, Meet the Robinsons, the Minion movies, The Grinch, just to name a few. Yep. And right now, you're directing your debut feature film, Hit Pig, for Cinesight. So let's get into it. We're going to share the hot off the press trailer for your short film in a minute, but I thought before we share it, we should provide a little context. So you completed the film in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. But for you, the way that you've been making this film is actually the way that many of us have been forced to be making content right now. The team consists of 350 artists from 35 countries around the world. Yep. So let's roll the trailer, Marina. It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. I can't wait to get in and chat some of the details. So in a way, you were very prescient, right? And you were already finding success leading a creative team while not physically being together in the traditional sense that we've all been making content and telling stories. Mm-hmm. So we've only had to figure this out recently for many of us, how to execute creatively in this way. Can you talk a little bit about what you had to really lean into in order to lead from the coffee table?
Yeah, I think it was something that it's a thing that I never planned. You know, it just happened organically, and surprisingly, it worked. So I think Mila, it's what, the short film and the theme and the special theme that it has was really the driving force behind allowing this process to happen. Because it's a very long process, and this didn't happen overnight, of course, So it started with my desire to do a short, and we really started small. And then because of that particular and very important thing that is so dear to many people that joined, like talking about the kids caught in the middle of war, it really slowly but steadily expanded to the team you just mentioned, more actually than 350 people from 35 countries. It's pretty incredible. So through the years, it evolved into a machine that was working well, and is what everybody now is experiencing, working remotely from home. But I think we are the biggest, probably remotely connected team for an independent short that I know. So
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, that is a massive crew for sure to be coordinating all of that. Were there things that you needed to change your approach on physically because you weren't actually with people? So some of the things that, I'm just thinking about are just like cultural sensitivities, right? So for many of us, the crews that we've worked with, they share a lot of may share some of our similar approaches.
Yeah.
In our approach to storytelling. So just thinking about the fact that some of us, we've just had a little bit of experience. Some of us have crews that are, located all over the world. So I've worked with teams in Brazil and Korea and China, but having the whole team spread out. And just, did you find that when you were trying to describe, for instance, nuanced acting, that perhaps someone in LA took some of your direction a different way than someone in Rome, if you were dealing with the team there? And can you talk about how you really had to think just about your communication and interpretation of those nuanced things, like particularly acting?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Absolutely. Culture, it's something that defines us so much that actually we react to certain things that might be very obvious for us or for somebody else, in a different way. Like, just to go to some specific example, I think out of all the culture, maybe, more like, for example, from India, I got some great artists, but at first, the way they address people might be here seen a bit too to the point and direct, so you're like, and they're like meaning that in a totally amazing, great way. It's just that a lot of those examples came up and actually helped me shape my understanding and sensibility on addressing people, because we are all meaning the same thing, but we coming to the table in a different way, and sometimes it's incredible, like how something that somebody from another culture with a different perspective might say something and force you to step outside your zone and just look at things from another point of view, like, oh, that wasn't that clear for him or her, because, ABC, whatever. So, and these are like almost daily little things that happen during production, and really helped the film, the team as a whole, and myself, of course, to really be more of a 360 kind of point of view as much as possible, with everything at all different levels of the production.
Yeah. And it seems amazing to be able to take on all of that stage when you're in production, right? It's the old thing of you show it to 10 or 15 people and get their feedback before you lock. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you need to take all that feedback on to make sure you're not missing anything, but you still need to stay true to your storytelling and your vision and be able to separate point of view from clarity or point of view from intention, right? And so can you talk a bit, or I'd just love to hear your directing style on that, right? It's negotiating every little thing all the time, but still staying true to the story that you want to tell. So would love to chat about that a bit.
No, that's very important, knowing exactly what you want for the story, and it's a fine balance, and that happens, even in bigger production for a feature, like where as much as you want to open the door to other people's opinion, you always have to keep the focus on what is your vision and what you really care about, especially when it's a personal story. It's slightly different from like a production where there are like multiple players, involved. But specifically to independent filmmaking and a story that is very personal, like Mila is to me, you really have to, yes, being open, but to keep your focus on what your story, what you want to tell is. So, but that's what I think defines the ability of being able to direct and enjoying that, doing that in your process. That is very important, and that people really feel if you're enjoying and you're honest and true to the theme. So it's to the team. So I think it's a fine line. It's something that you grow into and you discover depending on the team and the project as well.
Well, then I think, the idea that you take on all those ideas, and the reason you surround yourself with the strongest key crew is because you want their ideas, right? That's why you pick the best of the best. And when you decide on those department heads, you want them to weigh in. So it's about getting the best from them, but also making sure that it's serving your intent. And so with Mila, because there's no spoken word, you don't rely on any dialogue. Do you think that helped when you were trying to get people, again, different cultures and different languages and everybody on board? How do you think that played in to the film when it was completed? And just that you really had to get all of that across from everybody without relying on language to tell the story?
Yeah, well, it's something I think you always worked very well to everybody, just for that very reason you just mentioned, because it's music only, and it's very universal language for everybody. So everybody relates to that and understands what the character is going through. And I think, and my choice to go to music was to really make it to really clarify the message and make it an experience that it was relatable to anyone from any culture, whatever they were, whatever stories or war in different areas of the world that would have grew up with, or even worse experienced, at first hand. And so even if, of course, Mila is, based on the story from my mom and her experience during World War II, so it's Italy, but still, not having dialogue kind of opens up the message to a universal kind of audience. And so that was always very important for me. And the film is just we're completing sound design and final mix now. So it's like starting to submit for festivals, and hopefully, and we'll go to festival 2021. I don't know if in person because of everything, but Mila has been a very tough production. So also festival experience had to be tough. So I'm, even if it's going to be difficult to go in person. But so my experience so far is how the people that are working on it reacted, and some friends, but the film has not been seen yet in a larger scale. So I'll be really curious to see, how people react once it's starting the festivals.
Yeah, I mean, that experience alone of just hearing that feedback, such personal stories, I'm sure, because of the content, you'll get to hear all of that and just how you've touched people. Can you talk a bit about communicating the creative visually? So, just something like even a leaf blowing, right? It's like you're on a call, you're trying to explain how you see it, and maybe you're outside getting a leaf. How did you do that? Not being able to be in a room with someone and say, this is exactly what I want. You're trying to get it at the right angle on the camera and all of those things, just like the practicalities of getting across something visually, now that we're all working this way, I'm sure people would hear if you have any kind of tricks in your bag of what you did to try and communicate those types of things.
Yeah. Being separated, of course, doesn't help. Just one of the most frustrating things is like, what it would be so easy to just point your finger somewhere on a drawing. It's like that thing, but like,
yes.
Then you have to start. Does my mouse move? Do you see it? And it's so clunky. It's frustrating. But when I was doing Mila, that was actually the only way I could have done it. So we were all looking at that in a positive way. It was, we didn't have any other way to do it, basically. So that was it. Versus now, for everybody, how it is to do a production like personally, and that has been suddenly taken away from us. So it's a kind of a different point of view and reaction, more in a negative, like, oh, I could do that, I can't do that now, versus for us, it was like, it's either zero or we do it this way, So, but it was, sometimes difficult. So I think the most important thing is like to be very clear in how you communicate it, and through drawings, or even like, for example, we were like across, I don't know how many time zones, probably most of them. So sometimes, you have somebody sleeping, you want to give them a note, you could send them an email, you can send them a sketch, or you can just record yourself. Try to do it the best way you possibly can. And also, I think it's very important as a director, especially working in like this, like we are forced to work now, is to really communicate well with your supervisor, with the department supervisors, because they will be in other time zones and responsible for those people when you're asleep, So it's important to have that level of trust with your leads, supervisors, depending on the production, so that you're not alone and things are not lost in translation,
Mm-hmm.
So I think the most important, and anytime we had issues between people, that didn't happen much considering how many we were, that was, fortunate. But anytime we had issues, it was communication, lack of communication. I could have explained that better. I could have gotten those two people on a Zoom, Skype call, Zoom call, whatever. Well, actually, when we started, it was not Zoom, but
Yeah.
But and just figure it out. Versus when you're in a studio, there is some tension. You say, okay, guys, let's go for a coffee. You chit chat, done. You're done. Everybody. So when you have here, because you're like so much on your face, almost like, and it's like you lose kind of a body language too, the closeness. It's more difficult this way to kind of relate to each other as human beings than when you're together. So I think really over communication in this sense during this remote approach that we are in.
So something I'd love to unpack a bit is that you said when you would have that, and I love the idea that when perhaps you did face challenges with crew, you're right. It wasn't because somebody, just didn't get along with someone or something had happened at the studio or something like that. It was communication. And you were very specific with your language a minute ago when you said, I would get them together and I would say this. And I think that's really important because I know for me, if I haven't, let's say, gotten something that I've wanted, I always look to myself and say, okay, I didn't make my point clear enough, or I didn't stress the financial impact to get it, or I always take that if I don't get what I want, it's because of me, not the other person. Mm-hmm. And is that a style of directing that you have either consciously or unconsciously done, where if you're not getting something, you look inside and go, hey, it's me who's not doing something? Because I think that's really important, right? Yeah. Especially as female. Like I find that look at it and go, okay, instead of blaming the other person, what do I do? Because I just want to get to yes.
Yes.
So it's about getting a yes. How do I get there fast? Right?
It's very important, and I think it's embedded in us as women because we are more nurturing. It's kind of almost, you want everybody. I mean, personally, and it probably is my character, but I always empathize a lot with if something goes wrong in the team with someone. I mean, it really affects me, And so I try to avoid that as much as possible to get to that point where things are broken or, there is an issue. So to me, I'm always extra sensitive and attentive on making sure that everybody is okay, that, it was well communicated. There was something that didn't confuse anyone, just to avoid getting to that. And it happens, in any production, it will happen. There is going to be an issue. But many can be avoided, by just being careful and be very sensitive about, the person, how would this person feel if I was in their place, and trying to kind of project myself into how they would feel, if I was me, and I'm telling them this, how would I react, stuff like that, instead of just delivering a package and off you go and, I don't care, whatever, just, trying to.
And I think, to be clear, sometimes you're going to get a dud. Like, I'm not saying, right? You can't get blood from a stone, like sometimes, but I just thought it was an important thing to kind of touch on that approach, right? Of looking inside. So something else to chat about was just, we no longer, as you said, it's challenging in that we're not all together. So I'm wondering, though, about kind of flipping that a little bit and wondering if there's any positives about that. So I think we've all been in those situations where we come into a room and someone takes up a lot of space. Physically, there's a vibe that they bring, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they literally physically in a meeting room spread their stuff out everywhere and just not like man-spreading, but they just have a feeling, right? That's gone now in Zoom or Teams or Google Meet. We don't have that anymore. It's almost like it's a level playing field in a way because we all occupy the same tiny square. I mean, I haven't been on a call yet where, the lead person gets a bigger square and everybody else is small, right? So you are really measured on your contributions and not maybe as much the intangible things and the vibe and what you bring to that. Do you think there's anything to be gained by that, where you really get to see people's contributions? And we're also very aware of when people allow other team members to speak, right? We let somebody else say their piece. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on just, is it a more level playing field maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. It is true. I mean, in a more normal situation, depending on character, depending on position, people do take more space, like you say, and personally, it took me a few years to work on that, because I think how as women we are raised, and look, all cultures are different, all families are different, but kind of generally, from what I've seen in my years of experience, women tend to hold, not be as vocal than their colleagues, men colleagues. Happened to me many times, where thinking back, I should have been more vocal here and there. I should have said what I thought. So it's something that we need to push, I think, and this new reality can help us do that, or women that are struggling, or men as well, that maybe they're like more, less vocal, because, it's not just women, it's kind of depending also on character, many times at studios I've seen very vocal people that didn't really have at the end that much to give.
Yeah.
And some genius, incredible, shy person in the corner that people who should have listened to more or asked, So I think it's important also as a director or producer, or anyone, at the leadership level, to be very attentive in a studio reality or, remote, to who might be the, rough diamond in the rough, where you say to that maybe you're not listening to. So by going back to your question a bit more, I think it's important to find your voice and to be at ease with yourself, but always push your limit a little bit, because every little moment you push yourself a bit, it might seem a lot to you, but to the other people in the room, it's totally normal, and okay. It just to yourself, it feels like, oh my God, like you freak out, you're nervous, and that happens to anyone and everybody, especially when you start maybe in the industry. But it's totally okay as long as you're at ease, but you keep constantly push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit. You will keep growing, and then you will find the perfect balance, in a team, either in a room or like this, remotely. But I do see still a lot of people that, the camera and being just there, it makes some people nervous, I think. Where when you're in the room, you're kind of, let's say you're like, I don't know, 10 people, you kind of find, if you're shy, whatever, you don't want to speak up, you kind of find your corner and you're okay. Here, 10 little squares, it's there. And it's important that people do speak up, even in a remote environment, I think.
Yeah.
And sometimes the tendency I see in the team too is not to do that. So it's, I think it translates also in digital a bit. But for the people that do want to, then there, like you say, there is maybe a better opportunity to be more at level with everybody else.
Yeah. And I think it's incumbent upon those of us who are in positions that maybe are holding those meetings to make sure that there is space for everybody. I mean, that's like when you're together actually in a studio environment or not, you should be doing that. Yeah. Right. And looking for all voices. Yeah. But I do think it's incumbent to all of us and make sure that everybody's had their say. And sometimes it's clunky, right? It's everybody's talking over. And so sometimes, and I still haven't figured out, do we need to have the Zoom etiquette for, and start off every meeting saying, hey, please let somebody finish or raise your hand, because I even have meetings sometimes where I think, my goodness, there was something I wanted to say. And I didn't even have the breath to say it because it just went in a direction. So there's a couple clunky things that we actually have to figure out in this new way of working, right?
But I'm Italian, so talking over each other is something that goes with our culture. So I navigate well there. I find
the way to do it. So another thing I've been thinking too about storytelling this way is kind of our passive time and our workday, right? So we even started off when we were joined the call a few minutes early and saying, our workdays now start at 6 a.m. because you're dealing with, in your case, Montreal, 9 a.m. And then you've got somebody, in the UK. So then you're 8 hours. And then if you're dealing with somebody in Asia, you're behind, right? So it's literally, we could all be working 24 hours a day. And so I was thinking about this in the context of storytelling and Mila as a whole, that you had talked about that's, you would work on the film and then sometimes come back to it, work on it. You would go, work for some of the other companies that we had talked about during the intro and come back. And I'm wondering how or when we'll see the impact of kind of that type of storytelling for all of us, right? So you're working really hard on something, you step away and go pick up your kids or parents or deal with something else, come back in an hour, attack it again. And I'm wondering, just in terms of storytelling, if that is allowing us to take a bit of a breather with how we're attacking creative and how we're looking at specific designs or figuring out a scene, that now we've got these pockets, or if it really is better sometimes to just be in it for 11 hours straight. And just what we're going to see with the fruits of that in the coming months, because it's a different way of working. It's a bit broken up and stuff now, that there's no delineation between, you don't kind of have your time home where you're sitting in traffic for half an hour, you decompress, and you're now at home and off the clock. We can always be on it. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how you think that might affect storytelling for those of us in those types of positions and how we approach telling something?
Yeah, it is a kind of a broken way of doing it. And that's been kind of my style for the last 10 years since I started Mila, because that was the only way I could do, I needed, of course, like a job. So I was always employed as an animator and then board artist, actually, in the last 10 years. But I also wanted to do this project. So I think some people will be able to go through this better than others, meaning that the people that are able to multitask, they will be able to bridge those, taking the kids to, whatever, like bridge those gaps in between the day work well, so that at the end of the day for them, it's all one thing. And it doesn't really matter if they had to step out or do this or that during the day, because it's a different, you have a meeting at 10, so you take 2 hours break, And other people will struggle way more. I have friends that need their schedule, they need their thing. And so the studio kind of helps you structure your day, your life, and that's gone, so it's, you're on your own at home and you need to find the time to work when you can work and not wait too long and then you're late, So something that I had to learn when I started the remote work was in 2012, where you go from a studio environment, 9 to 6, 9 to 7, whatever it is, to you're on your own. You're your own boss in terms of, as long as you produce that sequence and they're happy with it, you can work at night, you can work as long as you take those 1, 2, 3 meetings, depending. You're kind of deciding. So that's the most difficult part, I think, of the day for artists in particular.
How do you think, though, it actually affects story, like, or actual storytelling, like going away from something, so having a problem and maybe for an hour going away and being able to maybe look at it a different way?
To me,
think about that?
For me, it's actually almost a positive for me personally, because like you just said, you have a time to step away and then come back to it and look at that from another perspective. I think that, but it's important to take the time, and that goes to what you were saying, the work day, it's stretched in length, because if you want to do your job well, you do need to step away, take your script, your animatic, whatever you're doing, wherever you are in production, analyze it, go through it on your own, and have those 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, whatever it is, to really concentrate. But that's something you do on your own, I think, not really following the schedule, the meetings and everything. And that's something that I usually do late at night after dinner, because kids are in bed. I can finally have some silence, and I can go through the pages with my full concentration, even if it's 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock and I'm tired, but at least, but that's something that I've always done in the last few years. I'm used to it, but I know it's struggling, many people are struggling through these times, because, all that we're used to, storytelling is kind of off. So I think, like I said earlier, I think it's really, everybody needs to find their own pace and try to get the positive out of it, like you were saying,
Yeah, just because I think there is something to letting something breathe, right? And so, I know with just how you produce Mila, again, talking about that ability to put something, I think you had said like putting your dreams in a drawer. And I love that, putting it aside for a little bit, never fully shutting that, closing that drawer, but coming back to it. And can you chat with us a little bit about that, how you would come back to it? And did you often come back with it with different points of view? I imagine with the amount of time it was, right? You grow as a storyteller, you figure out different things that you want to bring to the table, both just in your approach to storytelling and probably even just your visuals changed, right? Like you have an affinity, or you've found new tools or new way of communicating that way.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how the time that you took to make the film really informed the actual final film?
Yeah, that was very difficult because, like you said, it's 10 years and you change as a person, as an artist, of course. Technology changes around you faster than you actually can keep up with it on a volunteer-based project. So many elements were, really challenging in this project. But I think that, the story was actually locked probably around 5 years ago, something like that. The animatic to a point. I mean, we still had the room to slightly change some stuff, especially in the last year when the film was at Cineside. But 95%, I would say, of the story was that was the same 5 years ago. And it's very hard to do because, as a storyteller, you change, you evolve, you have time to step back and see things, like 3 months later. Oh, I would have done it that way. But it's something that you need to, if you did a good job on take one, or, it should still be relevant and strong piece 5 years later, especially because it comes from you. It's a story, like Mila is a story that is very personal to me. So I really knew exactly what I wanted to talk about, who Mila was, and what I wanted the audience to go away with. So if those elements are very strongly defined, I think you're in a good place. I think like in the regular production, going through 10 years, that you don't want to do it for various reasons, of course, but it would be way more difficult to hold on to the original story just because there are so many more players. So it's easier and it's doable when it's like a more independent, it's you, it's your vision, and everybody follows, hopefully if you do a good job, your vision. So it's easier in that sense, but it's still difficult because, like I said, even technology during these 10 years evolved faster than we could keep up with. And that forced us to do like 2 major upgrades of everything. And Cinesite kind of actually had to do another one, when they took the film in 2019. So it's just the nature of this project and any project that is done across 10 years. It's very tough.
Can you talk a little bit about something we were chatting about just a bit earlier, which is maybe when you are dealing with somebody and you can't seem to get what you want from them. And now, like you said, you can't go for coffee, you can't do these things. I feel like it might be nice for those of us on the call to hear some practical things that maybe you have used just to try and get that connection. Because it's really hard. You jump on a call, as we said, sometimes there's like 15, 20 people. You're trying to make a connection with someone because they're your department head, or you really need them to go the extra mile, or you feel that they're capable of more. Do you have anything kind of in your bag of tricks that you can share with us that you've honed over the last number of years for some of us just trying to get there now?
I use my charming accent a lot.
So we all have to get one. We all have to come up with a story. Okay.
That's perfect. That's good. I just look, and you add to the equation the extra difficulty of asking people to volunteer on the project. So and actually I have to say 90% or even more, probably 95% of people, I didn't even have to ask, they came on board. as volunteers, that was great. But still, when they had to deliver something, you can't set deadlines, So also, my producer, Andrea Ems, had to learn on how to navigate through not having deadlines and guesstimating to when you could get that particular shot or asset or design. So it's it's very difficult to do that. Can you go back to your question?
We actually, I'm going to go to some of the Q&A questions because there's one that's related. I just took a look at it, and it's I was just taking a quick peek to see if there was anything that could bridge this. And one of them is, which is actually really good, and I have actually come across this a bit, is are you finding it challenging? And this might even be more related to right now what you're doing on your feature film, with having to give criticism in a way that is supportive and constructive, but just not being able to take those cues. And like you said, put your hand on someone's shoulder and kind of say, I'm giving this to you because I want you to succeed. And please take this feedback in the way that I intend it, which is so that you can do better and so that you will be able to move forward. In that digital world, it's a great question, by the way, whoever question that is. How are you dealing with that? I think that's a really great topic.
Yeah. It's, I think that if people that are working for you see you vulnerable in a positive sense, in the sense that you have no problem saying, hey, I hear you, I know it's difficult, but this is what we have to deal with. Look, we have to go through that and that and that, but I'm sure you're going to bring like a different take to it. And you try just to, most of the time it's about morale, probably. It's about either they didn't do something the right way and you just need to re-energize them so that they have the energy and desire to tackle it from another point of view. And maybe that point of view is something that isn't beyond what you were expecting. It's amazing. So it's just really through this digital, interaction, finding the human aspect of really relating one to each other and not being the boss, like, or whatever director, like, oh no, that sucks. Blah, blah. You don't want that, nobody wants that. But so, and I try always to look at any communication in a way that I'm also learning daily, through people, and I appreciate how people are relating to each other and how we communicate between us. So I think it's super important to really be attentive to just the how sensitive you can be. Yes, telling the criticism of the note, but also with a kind, point of view. I don't know if it's answering the question.
I think it is. It is for sure. And I also think just in the way we're communicating now, it's so formal, right? It's like you want to talk to someone, you have to set up a meeting, you have to, right? Like both check your calendars, make sure you're available. In some way, it makes everything heavier, right? Whereas before you could kind of go by someone's desk and say, hey, I just want to chat with you and give you a bit of feedback. In that last meeting we had, I'm worried that you're taking this really personally. And I don't want you to go away feeling like we've lost that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think also just encouraging people to just pick up the phone and just out of the blue, have a conversation like we used to. Try and make those, I don't know, water cooler moments happen like a bit in the digital world. So someone isn't also saying like, oh my gosh, my director Cinzia wants to talk to me tomorrow, 10 a.m. And people are maybe, no, but really like coming to it with more, right? Because depending on where you are in your career, those things are just bigger, right? Than you being able to pop by someone's desk and give them kudos or whatever. So I think just from my point of view too, it's the encouragement of just less formal communication, but getting to those ways of just picking up the phone and not booking a meeting. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But also something that helps a lot is laughing together.
Yes. Yeah.
Finding something, whatever it is, the thing of the day that happened, something. So, and something that we started actually on HitPick that I think is really fun. And it just happened very naturally, but I think it could be like a good advice for any production. I mean, I'm not saying to do it, like every meeting, but we have a meeting on assets, and it's a bunch of people. And the first were like really formal, really like no one would have like their screen on, all black screens, and versus story, we were like all with the screens and stuff. And then just naturally, the head of rigging started to just give us at the end of the meeting a dad joke, really, like.
Yeah.
But now it's a thing. I mean, there is no way that meeting is going to be ended before there is, Ramiro's joke. And it might sound silly, but it did help bring that particular group together, because you start to kind of make up, jokes about how bad the joke is and stuff like that,
Yeah.
And it's silly. I mean, it's as simple as you can get, But because we don't have the interaction, the physical interaction, and the warmth of being together, you need to come up with stuff like that. So
I think we risk now becoming very transactional, right? You have that call, you discuss these things, you check it off, you go through these shots, you lock this, this sequence, you move on, right? It does become very transactional. And I love that you had a crew member that said, like, I still need to inject that why I'm here, which is laughter, storytelling, connection, right? Shared experience, and found a way to do that. That's why we're all here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Simple stuff like that. And other things that might happen these days, because many people go through a lot, emotionally. Some people are just very isolated. I'm lucky to be with my family, even if I'm, forced to be far away from my father, for example. He's in Italy. He's not going to be able to come and visit at Christmas like he usually does. Everybody has his, but some people in particular, they're very, they're more affected than others. And you can feel it sometimes in meetings, like there is a person that maybe talks more about that. And even if it's, I mean, we have another meeting in 20 minutes. I try to give them the space to talk. If they want to talk about something that's not related, I mean, as long as we don't like mess up the entire, day, of course, schedule. But it's important that they find a space, and they open up with you or with somebody else in their team. It's important to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Because it's so,
Can you talk about communication? And maybe this is even now, obviously you hone these skills on Mila, but just now, and just communication overall, how you make sure that everybody is aligned. And do you think that you had some amazing creative, not accidents, but creative ingenuity that happened because everybody was spread out? That's another question that we've got from the Q&A. Did you see that through the process of people being separated, that maybe that allowed for people to go deeper into something that perhaps they would have been pulled out of had they been in a group? Can you think of anything like that? Or just, again, I'm trying to look for the positives of the way that we're working, right?
I think that one thing that is in all the negative, very positive and very present in everybody's mind is like the animation industry is working and thriving, considering, compared to other industries like live action, restaurants, and so on. I mean, there is a long list. So that I think is very present from, conversation had in the last few months, not weeks. That is very, and that's something positive to cling on, to hold on to. Yes, it's an awful situation, but we have a job, and we need to make the most out of it. And I see people actually, happy to work and really determined to do the best they can, and really excited about the project. I don't know, might be every situation, every project is different, but I think that people tend to probably complain less, like you would, in the studios, like gossiping or whatever, like, oh, that doesn't, oh, this, but it's sometimes it levels out everything else, at least personally for me. I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately, where maybe in the past you're like, oh, this doesn't work, and that and that and that, and here is like, wow, it's incredible, we are still doing it, with all this craziness, so let's make the most out of it. Okay, this is not perfect, but we can still, it's more of a yay, we can do it, and let's make the most out of it, instead of like you have everything, and you start like,
And do you find that when you're saying let's make the most out of it, does that ring through to creatively when you're getting, I mean, this isn't a fully formed question, admittedly, but are you finding that you are, perhaps because you're cognizant of what's going on in the world, are you more flexible in what you're taking in, and maybe saying to people like, I'm understanding of what you're going through, and so you're not maybe going to push as hard? And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I'm just wondering if you think about that. And so again, you'll see the fruits of that we'll all see the fruits of that to come, but are we somehow forced to compromise a little bit in our storytelling? Again, I'm trying to bring it always back to storytelling and what's going to be on screen. Yeah. Are you thinking that maybe that might be the case because of it? Again, totally not fully formed question.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think there is because of the situation, I think in general people tend to be more accommodating than they would usually. Yeah. At the same time, of course, you want the best for the film. But if somebody's struggling and they're late with their sequence, as a team, you come together and see, okay, person A needs a bit more time, they're struggling. So person B is doing well. Can person B take on a bit more? You try to find ways to make it work as a team, and where one part is taking over from the other and kind of balancing, but still keeping everybody afloat and keep going forward, compared to maybe, when we were like in a regular situation, maybe you would be more harsh, like, really? I mean, it's been 2 weeks, whatever.
And do you think that you're able to, in this medium, and this is probably the last question before we wrap up, but do you find that you're able to find that out from people soon enough, right? Where you can go, okay, you're having a bit of a challenge, and so let's bring together and help this person. Or because we're all, again, working together, you can't walk by someone's desk. And so just thinking of the things we have to tweak, right, to support each other. So if we're going, hey, I'm finding that, at the end on Friday, this person was supposed to deliver the sequence. It's Friday at 3 and it's not done. In a studio, I would have walked by their desk on a Wednesday, gotten that vibe, and been able to jump in and help. So just thinking of those things that we need to do to tweak the way we work together as a team, because we've lost that.
Yeah, I think, it's important that not just the leads, director do it. It's like the production team is super important. I mean, it's always important, but in this situation, really important, because they're the connection between us and the artist, for example. They would check in, how is it going, and so on. They might know them more than maybe I know them, because they worked with them on other productions. It depends on the situation. So they need to, I think, be sensitive in that sense, like, okay, this person always delivered on time, but they've been missing the last 2, times, their deadline, whatever. They need to flag in a way where, there is something we should look at. But it's always, I think it's up also to me as a director to really be sensitive, and it's easier with people if you know somebody.
Yes, you have that shared history. Yeah, for sure.
And then you're like, oh, hang on, she said in a different way. It's just you can't even process what it is, but it's like a sensitive. I always had a very strong sixth sense, kind of. So I always try to follow that. If there is something goes off, usually I'm able to catch that, but it's more difficult with people that you don't know, for example, and you just met through.
Yes. Yeah. Those senses are no longer able to guide us as much as they did in the past, for sure. So it's,
The only thing I think you can do in that, it's to really try to create like every time you talk to these people in a group or individually, just to create like a nice atmosphere, environment. And even if you are stressed to 1000 because something just happened with whoever, it's not always easy, but try to filter it. Don't project on them anything negative. Just use yourself as a sponge. Try to absorb that as much as possible and try to keep the environment as positive as possible for everybody. And
so back to just that human connection, right? Even though we are communicating digitally, always bringing it back. Well, thank you so much. I feel like we could continue talking for quite a while. So a few things just before we wrap up. I'd like to invite everyone here to add their details to the WIA Global Talent Database. We are in the beta stages of building a talent database for studios to use for their hiring of women in order to move closer to WIA's goal of 50-50 by 2025. We are building a database for women, GNC, so gender nonconforming and non-binary folks. And this database will help to increase the visibility and accessibility for the industry to support the goal of animation leadership reflecting all of our voices through a more balanced and diverse talent pool. Watch the WIA social channels for an announcement later in November, where we'll make this database and entry form much more available. So to wrap up, please go to milafilm.com, and on social, you can follow under the same Mila Film. Festival premiere dates are being solidified for early 2021. So please sign up on the website so that you can be alerted to where you'll be able to screen the film in its entirety and where you can continue to support Cinzia. So Cinzia, thank you. It was a true pleasure talking to you this morning, and good luck with all of the festival dates to come in 2021.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's really, really an honor. Really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. Ciao.
Ciao.